And we're going to start with the picture right here. Today we're solving problems, answering questions that you guys have asked. So hope you'll stick with us. We're going to talk about the what, why, and the how. And this is all about the Thunderbolt 3 firmware update. And I think it'll be self-explanatory, but I want to go overhead and show you what we're dealing with on the machine. Now, the system we're working with is the Gigabyte TRX40 Designare Motherboard. We have two 16-lane slots and two 8-lane slots. The question came up, I've got to be able to take that Thunderbolt 3 card and use it in that second slot. How do I do that? Well, we have the ability to do that with the card that came with the motherboard. And this motherboard comes with the Titan Ridge Thunderbolt 3 card, which is PCI Express 3. And it also comes with an RS M.2 card. And that makes this motherboard, we think, a really good deal, bang for the buck. There's two different versions of this card, Revision 1 and Revision 2. Now, with this particular setup, we have Revision 1. And I want to mention this now for those of you that are contemplating the WRX80 as we go forward. My expectation that system will include also a Titan Ridge Thunderbolt 3 card, but I expect it will be Revision 2, and this firmware update I expect will already be applied. I'm just sharing that with you. That's what I think. When all this started, when we were talking about what we needed to do, I expected we were going to need a BIOS update so we could do what we're getting ready to do right now. Because if you'll remember the Thunderbolt 3 card, when we put it in this other slot, because I was trying to see, can we do two cards? You can't. But what I was trying to find out, why the system would not boot when we had it in that second slot. Everything was fine with plugging into the bus, plugging in the power, but the problem turned out to be when you plug in the USB, nothing, not a zip, zilch. It would not boot. You could not do anything. So my expectation was, we need a BIOS update. Turns out we need a firmware update. Because, as I have also reiterated before, somebody else has been the guinea pig, and we're going to go to some information on Gigabyte's, on the Gigabyte forum by Wizard, who details and outlines how to do this. That's what we're going to do. So what I'm going to first do is I want to take you to Windows, and we need to walk through the process of what we first need to have set up. Now, if you noticed, I've got the orientation of the cards reversed. What do I mean by that? Our video card, if you'll remember, is an EVGA GeForce RTX 3080. This video card is down here in the second 16-lane slot. It takes 2.2 slots wide, meaning I have difficulty getting access to that second 8-lane slot. Normally most people have the video card over here. Well, the question came up with a lot of people that say, okay, I've got a video card that's wider than even this. In other words, if you have something like an RTX 3090, it takes up 3 slots. Well, if it's 3 slots wide, then it blocks this first 8-lane slot. And that's another reason you need to be able to put this down here. So to be able to use all the resources and allocate, what you may end up having to do is using a video card that is 1 slot wide, so you can put it in the first slot. Once you're able to update the firmware that we're going to do, and I'm going to step through this because it's, you know, for Thunderbolt 3, the specifics are incredibly important. But once this is updated, then you can go back to your regular video card. So in our case, where we're using an RTX 3080, for the purpose of this presentation, because everything is always in a state of flux with us, I will be able to update this card where it is. Once that's done, then I can take and swap the cards around, because the RTX 3080, again, requires 2.2 slots. So once I put it back over, after the firmware update is done, once I put the video card back in the first 16-lane slot, I can then put the RS M.2 card in the second 16-lane slot. Now this slot will be blocked, but once the firmware update is done, then I'll be able to put it over here. The same thing applies, again, to reiterate, for those that have an RTX 3090. And at the moment, our particular installation, because of our last video, we're running Windows on a RAID installation. And if you want to take a look at that video because of the specificity. Now, I will say before we get started, remember the 3 things, we've got a video up on that as well. Number 1, you got to have your chipset drivers current. And there's 3 sets of drivers. 1, the RAID driver that we installed to do our installation in the beginning. 2, the RAID drivers that give us access to RAID Expert. That's installed. And number 3 are the actual chipset drivers that give us some other information. System management bus, I won't get into all that, but just all 3 of those need to be done. Then the video card drivers. And the video card drivers need to be not the ones from Microsoft, but you want to go to EVGA and get the latest version. So again, this is an RTX 3080. So those are the drivers we downloaded, and those are current. Then we used the driver that's on the CD for Thunderbolt 3. And here's where it gets interesting. There's two different ways now we can look at this driver. We can go to the control panel and go to Device Manager, or we'll just cut to the chase, and I've got the Thunderbolt 3 control panel up. And when I click on that, and it takes a look at the system, and the default you would see would be attached devices. And if nothing has been attached, then you won't see anything. But when I go to the About screen, I get not only the driver version, but I also get the firmware version. I would also get that information if I plugged in a device. And in the past, the instructions, the way they used to be and the way they are now, the driver and the firmware update were together. Now they're separate, where you needed to have something plugged in. Right now, that's also separate. So we're going to go with what the default installation is: chipset drivers, video card drivers, and the driver off the motherboard driver CD. And what's curious, I've got a document put together I want to show you and compare the versions of the drivers. Now, because I made the distinction of there being two different cards, you've got the version 1, you've got the revision 1 and revision 2. Those two use different drivers, but those two use the same firmware update tool. So I got another document I want to show you right quick. So our controller driver is 141.648.5. I'll come back to that in just a minute. Now this document I put together, and I'll have all this information up on the description of the video, for the Gigabyte Titan Ridge Thunderbolt 3 Revision 1 and the Gigabyte Titan Ridge Thunderbolt 3 Revision 2 card. The driver that we're going to need is 1.41.648.4. And for the Revision 2 card, for those that have it, that's a 1.41.890.0. I compare because I want to make sure we get this right. Now, a couple of years ago when we did our first Thunderbolt 3 on the X399, and remember right now we're on the TRX40 platform. But back on the X399, where we had partial support, meaning no BIOS support, one of our subscribers updated the firmware, and at the time, because of the issue with drivers, he bricked the card and he said, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, you need to downgrade the firmware." So I wasn't able to help him at the time. We were remodeling. He found someone that did, got him back up and running. So I've been real leery about touching that firmware because you can brick the card. Now, I don't expect that to happen with this, but I'm being very particular about how this is done because some of you guys have had problems with some of the other things we've shown. Keep it simple. Drivers, drivers, drivers. And now let's look again at the driver and the tool. What I'm going to point out is, just to cut to the chase, the driver that we have that's on the CD is a newer version than the driver you can download from the website. So I just want to point that out. As of this date, which is 2/25/2021, so as a point of reference. So again, to reiterate, the driver we're looking at is 141.648.4, and going back to the Thunderbolt control panel, what we have is driver 141.648.5. So 0.5 versus 0.4. My point of this, we should be good to go with the driver we've got. The next thing we need to do is download the firmware tool, and I'm going to show you the firmware tool, same for both of them, but the specificity. I have not done this, so we're going to be doing this for the first time. I hope it's going to work, but if it fails, I got another card I can pull and try it again. I'm just saying. So the firmware tool is dated from 3/26, and that's B20.0320.1 and B20.0320.1. So the Thunderbolt firmware update tool is the same file, same date. So all I need to do is go to this link, and I'm going to provide it, and we're going to download the Thunderbolt firmware update tool. And all this information I'm sharing with you and how we're going to do with the next process. Once we download this tool, the next link I'm going to show you is a document that is the information I've extrapolated off of the Gigabyte forums, and I give credit to, I believe his name is Wizard, that talked about how to do this. And as we go through this, there's going to be some interaction because there's some other things we're going to do that's a part of the process that relates to the system, but also may have ramifications for other people on other platforms. I'll get into that, and I'll show you in just a minute, so I hope you guys will stay with us on this. So let's get our tool. So the first thing we're presented, we're going to the downloads for Windows 10. There's a driver and a utility, and the utility we need is the firmware update tool. So we're going to download that to the machine. It's a zip file. So remember, zip files, we have to open them up, unzip them. I will extract. I'll remove the check mark because I don't need two windows open. Now that that's been extracted, we'll zoom in on the extracted file, and this is FW50. Now remember, the tool we have is Firmware 43. And the reason I point this out, whatever was in between, I have no idea what it is or what it was. All I know is what we're doing, going from version 43 on the firmware to this newer version. And I say this now because as it relates to a BIOS, when you have a BIOS update, you step through each version because you don't know what part is being updated and what part is not being updated. So you step through each version. But with this firmware update we're getting ready to do to this Thunderbolt 3 card, we're going from 43 up to what's currently available. There's no in between. And once we're finished, I will plug in first a USB-C device, which will not activate the control panel, but just to make sure we still have connectivity. Then I will use the BlackJet Cinema dock to verify that it works. And then the video following up from this, unless another question comes up, because that's what we're answering, are subscriber questions. Our next goal after this is to install a Thunderbolt 3 audio interface. And it's going to be one I think a lot of people are interested in seeing. And that could end up being more than one video because it'll be connected, make sure it works, and then, because we got a lot of stuff going on that we got to show. So from 43 to 50, we'll open the folder. We've got to unpack it. So let's unpack. And this is from 7Z. And here we go. Now this shows where the folder is going to be on the drive. Current NVMe version is 43, and it will flash to NVMe version 5.00. We're going to flash it and pray we're doing a good thing. Firmware update in progress, firmware update fail. Well, that was exciting. So the next question is, why did it fail? It could be that our path is too long. It could be for any number of reasons. So now what we need to do is go to the document, compare with the process. So I'm going to close this if it will let me. Right now it won't let me. Our firmware update is still 43. Okay, so the other document we're going to take a look at. Roll back the drivers on the Titan Ridge card to the default. Default is what we have. Uninstall any modern drivers you might have put in. We did not. Update the firmware to the version 5 newest. That's what we're in the process of doing. Then Wizard said reinstall the newest drivers from Intel, then increase the following settings. We have not done any of that. There is another setting that my guess might be part of the problem, and we may try that. And this is quite a bit of activity that Wizard has in this machine. And another setting he's got is about the 4G decoding. He enabled it and set it to 40 bits. So what we're going to do is go into the BIOS, and we're going to increase the settings on the memory allocation, and we're going to go in and enable 4G decoding. 4G decoding has been an issue in the past that was supposedly for backwards compatibility. As we go forward, supposedly if you use all the cards, and we happen to be using the M.2Rs card, my expectation is, since we have 3 cards on this bus, that may be part of our problem, is we need to enable 4G decoding. Now, in the past, because it was backwards compatibility, the first and only thing you wanted to enable 4G decoding for was if you had like a Tesla card. You put in the 4G decoding and everything would work for that higher memory allocation. So that may be why this failed. So what we need to do is go in BIOS and make a couple of changes, come back and try this again and see if that solves our problem. Now, I mention this and I make point of this because if you are doing video capture, which is another video we're going to be doing, could come up before we do Thunderbolt 3, but it's based on give and take of the questions and volume and how they come through from what you guys ask. That's one of the things recommended by AverMedia, that if you have trouble capturing 4K and you drop frames, you want to enable 4G decoding, which is a kind of an eye-opener. So let's boot to the BIOS and see if we can get this thing up. Enable 4G decoding. Increase the memory buffer size on the Thunderbolt 3 card. Come back and try to update again. So firmware update failed. I cannot even close the window. Now the Windows says the device needs to restart because I've got some updates. So apparently if I have some Microsoft updates, that also could have been what caused this to fail. Thank you, Microsoft. I appreciate that. So I've got to kill this process and hope I don't kill the card, which means I will close the documents out. And since Microsoft wants to reboot, I have no choice but to reboot. Let's see if this will bring this back. And while this is rebooting, once I get access to the computer, in other words, once I can get to the BIOS when I hear it post, I'm going to go into the BIOS and I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of changes. As we have updated the BIOS, we've seen some changes to how Thunderbolt 3 is recognized. Even though Thunderbolt 3 is PCI Express 3, with the previous BIOSes, there were a couple of settings that were manually set that were showing. Now with this latest update that we've got, as of this date I just mentioned, it's automatic. And the default settings should be okay. Okay, we're back into the BIOS. We will go to Settings. We'll go to I/O ports. And there used to be a setting here on top, which is now here below for Thunderbolt configuration. I'm going to double check. And the memory settings are 128. And I believe those settings can be increased to 256. So we're going to allocate memory of 256 megabytes per port. And the prefetch memory allocation also 256 megabytes per port. Okay, under Settings I/O ports, we will go to Thunderbolt configuration, which now is enabled. And we have changed the memory allocation per port to 256 megabytes. And if you notice in the bottom left-hand corner, the option description, reserved memory for Thunderbolt. Not enough memory might cause devices not working. So we were able to tab through that and set it to 256 megabytes. The second one is the prefetch memory allocation per port in megabytes. So if again you look at the bottom left of the option description, reserved prefetch memory for Thunderbolt. Not enough prefetch memory might cause devices to not work. For VGA card support, it's recommended to set to 256 megabytes or higher. So again, we tabbed through that and got that to 256 megabytes. So we can escape that, and the next setting we're looking for is we want to get to the 4G decoding. And that should be under bifurcation. So bifurcation would be right there, above 4G decoding, which is disabled. So we're going to enable that feature, and it's set above 4 gig limit to 40 bits. And according to our documentation from Wizard, he suggested to set that 4G decoding set at 40 bits. So that's what we're doing. Now we should be able to go to Save and Exit, press F10, save the configuration. Shows the three things we've changed. 2 which deal with Thunderbolt 3, and we set that memory allocation to 256 megabytes on both settings. And we've enabled 4G decoding, and we've left it at the 40 bits. So let's see now we reboot, get this thing up and running again. Because right now we're in this Microsoft update thing. So I'm kind of pushing it. I'm doing two things. I should only do one thing, but I'm doing two things, and let's see if the sequence will be copacetic. So we're going to save configuration, reboot the computer. And because of the system-wide setting that we have done, the system will need to power down, go through the reboot, test itself, come back up. As soon as it comes back up, we'll go back to Windows, let Windows finish its update, and then see if we're ready for our firmware update again. You know, it's interesting how all this stuff is so interrelated and intertwined, how, you know, one thing can affect something else. And when something doesn't work, here we are rebooting. When something doesn't work and we're trying to diagnose it, you know, information never follows a straight line. It's like it goes around this way. But it'd be nice if somebody had all this stuff laid out for us, but that's what we're here to help figure it out. And I mention that now for those of you that have tried to contact us and wanted to hire me to help you with some of your work. If you haven't heard from me, please check your spam folder, because just because you haven't heard from me doesn't mean I haven't responded. I'm just saying. Because that's what we're here for, to help. But I got to tell you, the email is strictly for clients, because I can't afford to do that for free. I hope you understand. This that we do on Build or Buy on YouTube is for free. And I appreciate everybody's support. I want to thank you for watching. Okay, we're finishing the update. Windows is coming back up. Now let's see if our firmware update will succeed this time. Microsoft and all their silly little things. Oh, these updates. Let's finish setting up your device. Continue. Remind me in 3 days. No. Recommended browser settings. We're going to skip that. Sign in with Microsoft. No. We're going to cancel that. We've updated Windows to bring you a brand new web browser built for Windows 10. Yeah, let's see. The two that I use are not from Microsoft. Fetching your Windows credentials. Meet the new Microsoft Edge, optimized for Windows 10. Not interested? Can't close it until I click Get Started. I have to confirm it, import from Google. Then I can informational, focused. Let's leave focused, confirm it, continue without signing in. Now I can close the browser. Wow, what a dog and pony show. So I'm going to bring up the Thunderbolt device utility again, about, and we're still at 43. So we're going to go back and bring up our firmware update and see if we can go through that again and see if it'll succeed. So again, we'll unpack. This will flash to version 5 from version 43. Let's see this time if it'll succeed. Again, it shows the temporary file where that data is at. What I'm wondering is if the path may be part of the problem. There's not much I can do about it. So let's flash it and see what happens. Firmware update failed. Okay, so the driver that we have that's on the CD could be the problem. So we're going to now install the driver off the website that's one version back and see if that'll solve our problem. Crazy, right? It is what it is. So again, we're still at version 43 and we're trying to go from 43 to 50. But our driver is 141.648.5, and I guess we may have to have 141.648.4, which is the one on the website. And the only way to close that out will be to reboot the computer again. So let's go ahead and do that. My concern is if I kill this from the task manager, I don't know that I will actually be killing it. It's a 32-bit application. Ah, that did it. Okay. I don't need to answer questions. Everything worked. Let's bring up our document. We're going to go back and download that driver and downgrade the driver and see if that'll get us up and running. So the driver we need, this works with Windows 10 version 1909, and we are running Windows 10 204. Well, let's see what happens. Again, we'll unzip the driver, extract, and let's read that document again on the utility. And the utility says specifically, please update Thunderbolt driver first before installing this utility. Make sure your system's internet connection is functioning before applying this Thunderbolt driver update. Curious. Okay. Thunderbolt driver. Let's unzip it and downgrade it from what's on the CD. Let's look at about. Still says 141.6485. So we will run the install update. There's a Windows Setup DCH and a Thunderbolt application launcher. So let's do the install update. We have a DCH setup and install update. So we'll run the install update. And that still says 141.648.5. Let's try DCH setup. So what we're going to need to do, based on what Wizard said, roll back the drivers to the default version. The firmware upgrade will fail otherwise. Well, we're using the default version, which is on the disk. So uninstall your modern drivers and select delete and uninstall it from Device Manager. Okay, so that's a vital step. So let's bring up Device Manager and roll those drivers back. Control Panel, Device Manager, System Devices, scroll down to Thunderbolt 3, right click. Let's do a scan for hardware changes first. I'll double click on it. It will show me the driver, which is still the 0.5. We're trying to get to the 0.4. So what we'll do, let's uninstall the device and we'll delete the driver. Now that we've uninstalled the driver, let's go back and run from the install update and see if that'll get it. Now the other is if I were to go through and try to update the driver from here. I don't know that that'll work. So let's do the install update, and it goes by so fast we don't get a chance to see what's going on. So let's go back to the Device Manager, Control Panel Device Manager, System Devices, see if we have, and I don't see Thunderbolt 3, so we need to scan for hardware changes. The tree stayed open, so we should have a device. There it is. Let's look at driver details, and we're still 141.648.5. Wow, So that's the default driver, and we're still getting a failure. And as Wizard said, roll back the drivers to the default, which is what we have, or the firmware upgrade will fail. Uninstall the modern drivers and select delete when you uninstall it in Device Manager, and then update the firmware. And then he said reinstall the newest drivers from Intel, which I'm not comfortable with. I understand, but right now we're not getting past step 1. Roll back the drivers to the default. That's what we've done. I wonder what we might do now is try going to Control Panel and see if we can uninstall the driver from the Control Panel, which would be the Add Remove Programs, which is now called Programs and Features. And that would be AMD RAID, AMD Software, Intel Wireless, Intel Network. I don't see anything that deals with just Thunderbolt. So until I can get that driver downgraded, we're not going to get that firmware in there. Now we've done Windows installation on the boot NVMe drive that normally is on the motherboard, which is removed, but it also has the same driver we're using, which is with the RS-M.2 card. I expected once we solve this 4G decoding, I thought that might be part of the problem. Does not appear to be the case. So I thought we had the solution to the problem that we could show you guys with this video, but we don't have it solved yet. So I'm going to try deleting the driver, and I got an idea. Let's see. We've got to get that driver downgraded, and until we do, that's not going to work. So Control Panel, Device Manager, System Devices, Thunderbolt 3. I wonder if we try to update the driver, browse for it. I've got Thunderbolt 3 EB. I'm going to try disk, and let's take it over to where that's at, which would be Downloads, Thunderbolt, Pack. Let's try this one, see if that works. Comes up with the same name. Let's see if that'll work. Installing driver. Worst thing that can happen is Windows will go bonkers. Okay, Windows has successfully updated your driver. Windows has finished installing the driver for the device. The hardware you installed will not work until you restart your computer. Well, if what we have done is correct, that's the way we used to do things. It's been a long time since I've had to do that. So let's reboot the computer and see if that works. What a dog and pony show. But it still shows the driver version of 141.648.5. So I don't know that we've done any good. So let's restart. Close everything down. We'll reboot. And we'll see what happens. I got to tell you, this Thunderbolt 3 thing has been really finicky. You guys have been wanting us to show some more stuff, but until we got past why we couldn't get this card in that second slot, I mean, we needed to solve one problem before we created another one. Because if we had got this working and tried to move it, then we'd had to gone way, 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 way back. And I wanted to make sure everything worked at the point we're at, so it works in either slot, before we make the next step. So Windows is rebooting. And right now we know, based on what Wizard has said, what has to happen. We've got the default drivers, but we are one version newer. And that may make the difference. I don't know. But what I've just done is the way we used to do drivers. Is that going to work? I have no idea. We're back. But it's a first step in trying to diagnose the problem. So let's go to Control Panel, Device Manager, and System Devices. The fact that we don't have any question marks is good. And driver, no. We're still 141.648.5. So that's an exercise in futility. I thought Wizard had it. And I've been holding off showing you guys this stuff because I thought, just want to double check. I even sent Wizard a message asking, can I give you credit for it? Haven't heard thing, crickets. So I must be doing something wrong. And he's got an interesting system that he's built. He's got a Koenig card in the single lane slot. Well, we've turned on 4G decoding. We've increased the settings for Thunderbolt for that to be successful. But we are still having an issue. Now he's got his video card in slot 1. And this could be the other issue. He's got his video card in slot 1, but he does not have the RS-M.2 card installed. He's got it reserved for that. I always say change one thing changes everything. Now, the point of this is we've tried this way. If this didn't work, based on the instructions and based on his setup, the way he's got his working, what we're going to have to do is pull out the RTX 3080 that we have here. That's 2.2 slots wide. We're going to have to put in the 2080 Ti that's 1 slot wide, put it back in slot 1, and I got a sneaking suspicion we need to pull out the RS-M.2 card. Wow. Which means we've got to put the M.2 NVMe drive back on connector 1, which is to the CPU. Because there could be something, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud, there could be something with that. So the first thing we'll do is to change the orientation of the cards and drop down to a 2080. I'm going to step through this until we figure this out. And then we'll see if it works with the RS. If it doesn't, then the next step will be to go to the M.2 on the motherboard. Fascinating, right? It is what it is. But before we proceed, just to make sure, even though the driver is still what it is, I'm going to try the firmware update one more time. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So 141.648.5. Thunderbolt is there, but it's not working. But I want to try one more time. Downloads, we'll go to the firmware, run it a third time. Third time's a charm. So let's see. Would you believe it's working this time? So what I did worked. I don't know about you, but that kind of blows my mind. So, wow. Changing the driver the way I did was the key, which means we didn't have to change the video card, which means we didn't have to pull out the M.2 card. But changing that driver the way I did, even though it still shows the same version, that is working. So if I had not on a fluke tried that, we would not be doing the firmware update right now that we're doing. Now, what I'm going to do is I have several others of these Titan Ridge cards. I'm going to go ahead and update the firmware on the other ones so that they will be ready to go. Once they're all updated, and I know they've got the current firmware, which is version 50, we'll then proceed to go through, connect, and make sure everything is working. So all we had to do is downgrade that driver, even though it shows the same version. It just fascinates me how something so minor can be so significant. Had the default driver, still showed the same version. The way I changed the driver was the way we've been doing it since Windows 95, which was a big deal with 95, 98, 2000, Vista. And even though it showed the same version of the driver, it was enough different that that's what it took to make this work. So now we need to reboot. Okay, so we're going to reboot. I'll click yes. We'll come back and check our version, see where we're at. Now once we've verified that everything's working, because we're going to go back to the control panel. Once we verify that everything's working and we're good to go, then our next step, of course, will be to update the other cards. Then we'll connect the device. Here at boot, we're coming back up. Yeah, I will verify with the BlackJet Cinema Dock. In fact, I need to make a separate video just about the BlackJet Cinema Dock, because people searching for Thunderbolt don't necessarily search for the BlackJet Cinema Dock to realize the significance of that device, because there's another device I'm going to compare it to. And as we go through this, because of the three things that Thunderbolt 3 can do, I think data connectivity is the one to me that makes the most sense. Okay, we're back up in Windows. Let's go to the Thunderbolt 3 control panel and see what we got. All right. Thunderbolt 3 control panel, nothing's attached. We'll go to the About, and this says firmware version unknown. That's exciting. Still says controller driver version is 141.648.5. Well, we think we've updated the firmware. We're not 100% that we've updated the firmware, but the utility will tell us. So I'm going to run the utility again, not execute it, but just execute it to the point that it'll tell me. We'll see what we've got. Boy, the things we do. This Thunderbolt 3 is really a dog and pony show. Let's go back to our utility under downloads and the firmware update tool. What is this, the fourth time we've run this? Value cannot be null, parameter name value. Wow. I got a sneaking suspicion we just bricked the card. I don't know that for a fact. I need to plug in a device. We'll see. So the firmware update utility will not run. So we don't know. Value cannot be null, parameter name value. But it will not run. So the first thing I'm going to do, this is USB-C. I'm going to connect this and see if we see something, to see what kind of connectivity we've got. So I'll plug this into a Thunderbolt port and watch on the bottom right corner of the screen. We should see some activity, and we don't see anything. So that tells me we don't have connectivity. So we bricked the card because we're not getting connectivity with USB-C. If we don't get connectivity with USB-C, then we would not get connectivity. Amazing. So we have just bricked it. Driver version, 2 ports, firmware version unknown. Well, that's kind of a bummer. What I need to do is get out the BlackJet Cinema dock and see if we can hook it up. We won't know for certain until we try. And the BlackJet Cinema dock is a rack mount type of device, and we do not have it rack mounted, but that was the intention in the plan. Okay, the big deal is we have a power cable with a wall wart, and we also have the special cable that it connects with, which is a Thunderbolt 3 cable. Little bitty thing. So we'll get our power plugged in. Power is plugged in. We will plug in the Thunderbolt 3 cable. Now we're going to take a look at the we'll go from the camera to the computer and watch the monitor on the bottom right hand corner if anything connects, and then we'll bring up the utility. Right now I think the card's bricked. We're going to find out. Okay, the cable is now being plugged into the card, and we got nothing. No, it doesn't see anything. Firmware unknown. So we have bricked it. I will unplug it, plug it into another port, still nothing. So that's always been my concern about the updating the firmware on the Thunderbolt 3. Okay, so that didn't work. We bricked it. And the question is, how do we get it back? That's going to require some more research. Well, it kind of confirms my suspicions. I've been leery of doing this until somebody else had done it, and somebody had success with it, and we did it, and we did not have success with it. I would not advise anybody to update that firmware until we get some confirmation. Now, what I can say is if I were to contact Gigabyte and say, hey, I've got a card that was bricked because the card came with the motherboard, you know what Gigabyte's going to tell you? Send the whole thing back. That's not going to happen. So that kind of puts it SOL. The reason to update the firmware is so we can get the card in the second 16-lane slot. We've bricked the card, so we can't move it. Card's useless now. So don't nobody try it. So now we're going to do some research and figure out how to get the card back up. Because it's been bricked, we need an older version to downgrade the firmware. And based on the information, it looks like we should have had the video card in slot 1, but we didn't have it set up that way. He had a 2080 Ti in there. That's what we should have done with the Thunderbolt 3. It said it worked, but apparently it did not. Roll back the drivers. We did that, and the card is non-functional. And if I try to run the firmware update utility again, it fails, which makes me wonder. Okay, what I'm going to do is go to Device Manager and do the same thing again. Let's try the utility. And if the utility fails, which I expect it will, yeah, utility fails. Okay, since the utility fails, let's go back to the Control Panel Device Manager, do the same little trick. See, it shows it's there and it's working, but it's not. And let's see if we can do the same thing to the driver again. Update it, browse, it remembers where I was at. I'm going to say next. Best driver's already installed. So what I want to do is I'll uninstall the driver. I'll do a scan for a hardware change. Tree is still open. There's the Thunderbolt controller and the 3.1 controller. So the Thunderbolt controller, driver. We're going to update. We're going to browse, same location. Let's try update the driver on Windows Update this time. Could not complete the install because an update service was shutting down. So let's check for Windows Update and see what they've got. Oh, that's so annoying. So I got to finish these Windows Update before I can do what I'm trying to do. And who knows, this might solve our problem. So I'm going to go ahead and let Microsoft reboot. We'll see what comes back, see if it works. It's really annoying when you're trying to do a presentation and you're monkeying with Microsoft because they're messing with the computer. So let's see what happens with this update. See if we get our device back. We've been at this an hour and 15 minutes. Wow. This is supposed to be simple. Okay, I heard it post. Computer's coming back up. I'm just curious. I'm going to go into the BIOS right quick and see how we see the card. Settings, I/O ports. There's Thunderbolt. So the Thunderbolt card is seen and everything I've done still works. So because we're good from the BIOS, it should be good from Windows. So we'll go to F10, Save Configuration, Reboot. So while we check the BIOS just to verify, the hardware is still seen by the computer. So let's get back into Windows and see if the operating system will see it. Could be hung because the updates Microsoft is doing. I don't know. We'll see. So computer's coming back up. You know, I always say computers are great when they work. They're a pile of junk when they don't. And when you get into stuff like this, that's when it gets interesting, when you get in the weeds. So I hope we get this figured out. Make a great video if we do. If we don't, nobody will see this but me. Okay, Windows is coming back up. Let's go back to the computer. Lord, I pray this is going to work. Let's go to the Thunderbolt control panel. We'll do the about. Wow, I'm ecstatic. So we do have success. We didn't have success a while ago, and I was really bummed about that. Apparently something was hung because of Microsoft and their updates. So success by design or success by accident. So you gotta be prepared for that. You know, we verified the BIOS. That was all good. We saw we were trying to monkey with the driver. I said, let's go let Microsoft take a look at it, and kind of find out Microsoft was messing with the machine with the updates. So that's why this wasn't working. That's why we couldn't see anything. So we now have it. So I'm going to go through the process again since we know that part works, and I'll step through it. This is a USB-C device. So we're going to go to the computer, watch the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to close the Thunderbolt control panel because it won't matter with this, but I'm stepping through as I test. So watch the bottom corner of the screen. This is a SanDisk drive, and I'm going to plug this into one of the Thunderbolt 3 ports on the Thunderbolt 3 card. And on the bottom right-hand corner, we should see device connectivity, and we do. Okay, what that tells me, you know, everything matters. What that tells me is we have connectivity with the card. Everything's good in the BIOS, but we have connectivity with the card because we have USB-C. Now when I get the BlackJet Cinema dock, I'm going to go through that again, get it back out. We're going to plug it in, and we'll interact and watch the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. We should see a device. But I'm stepping through this to figure out what I need to do so that as we try to solve a problem, we can repeat it. If we can't repeat it, we can't solve it. And this kind of blows my mind. So a reboot, Microsoft is monkeying the machine. Another reboot, we're back in business. Wow. So when I unplug that device, that screen will go away. Just that simple. I use this more for testing than I actually do to actually use it to move data with, which is kind of wild. So we'll set that aside. And this is a SanDisk. Got this at Costco. Nice device. And I can also plug it into a USB 3 port. BlackJet Cinema dock. The intention for the BlackJet Cinema dock is so that we could plug this in, have the ability to hot swap our SSDs, because like I've said before, we record the meeting with the gear that's in the rack to an SSD recorder. That SSD then goes into an IC dock that lets us put it in a removable rack in the computer that we can then edit the video. Cumbersome. That SSD recorder has Thunderbolt on it, but it's Thunderbolt 2. Well, in the past, with the X399 chipset, we didn't have legacy support for Thunderbolt, which was Thunderbolt 1 and 2. We only have native chipset support at boot, and that was for Thunderbolt 3. Without BIOS support, it was what it was. Now that we've gone to the TRX40, and I expect the same on the WRX80, we will have native support, meaning Thunderbolt 1, 2, and 3. Thunderbolt 1 and 2 legacy, and Thunderbolt 3 native support. So back to the BlackJet Cinema dock. This is more of a professional type device. This is not really a consumer type device. But if you use a lot of external media with cameras or SSDs like we do, then I look at that as an essential piece of equipment. But I can plug in 2 SSDs. I've got a removable for CFast, QXD, compact flash, and a micro SD and SD. We use SSDs and then the SD cards. That's all we use. I could change out those 2 modules, but it's not been an issue. But this is not something you know about unless you know about it. It's not something you're going to find. And some of the stuff we do with content creation borders on consumer versus professional products. The Thunderbolt 3 cable that comes with it, so we'll plug power back in. When I test, I like to go through layers so that I know when one thing works, the next thing my expectation is. And I'll say it, the more I know, or the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. And the more I learn, the more I realize, the more I need to know. Now what's going to be curious is I'm going to step through those other cards and I'm going to update them just like I did this one while we're in this state of flux before I change the orientation of the cards to make sure that works, because that's what this is all about. You know, the what, the why, and the how. The firmware, you've seen what I've gone through, the problems I've had, you've seen what I've done to solve it, and I got to tell you, I'm stoked it's working right now. But this is the test to make sure we have Thunderbolt 3. Okay. I'm going to plug in this cable to the device, and I've got Thunderbolt 3 I'm going to plug into the card. So I'm going to put the screen up for the computer. You're going to see on the bottom right hand corner something will flash up about connectivity if we're working. So here goes the cable, here goes connectivity, bottom right hand corner, And there it is. New Thunderbolt device has been connected. Click here to approve the device. So I'm going to connect. The panel comes up. It says the ATEC Flash Cinema, Blackjet Cinema dock. And instead of do not connect, I'm going to say, what I want that to do is to say OK. Selecting do not connect will prevent that device and all devices further down the chain from being used on the system. The default is do not connect. I want to change that. So I clicked on it to always connect. It's a security issue, but it's annoying. So connect only once, always connect, or do not connect. I'm going to click on always connect. It's been approved. I'm going to click OK. It's on port 2, control panel closed. So I'm going to bring up the control panel again. Blackjet Cinema dock shows the status connected on port 2. I look at approved devices. That's what we did, we approved it. I look at attached devices. That's what we've done, attached. And now I will look at manage approved devices. So we have ATEC Flash, the Blackjet Cinema dock attached, unknown pre-boot vendor, unknown pre-boot model. So whatever that is, I don't know. Removing the selected device will require reapproval of your Thunderbolt devices. That could have been as a result of the USB-C device I had connected. I don't know. It's the only other thing that's been on there. Same port, could have been, don't remember. But I'm going to leave it. It's no big deal. And then about. And the about is what's most important. Now again, if we look at this through the control panel device manager, we see the controller driver version, and it still says 1.41.648.5. And specifically that's supposed to be 0.4. So you saw what I went through to make that work, to get this thing up and running. Man, what a dog and pony show. But anyway, the other thing we need that we can only get from the control panel is the NVMe version. The other way to find out is to run the utility, and it'll tell you what's there. We're upgraded to version 5.0. So we've got the 1.41.648.5, which is supposed to be 0.4. And then we've got the NVM firmware version 50.0. Pretty cool. Okay, to reiterate of the what, why, and how of getting the Thunderbolt 3 card, which is in the first 8-lane slot, to get it into the second 8-lane slot. For those that have a video card that's too big and you need to swap that around. We have our video card in the second 16-lane slot. So when we change our orientation, the system should still boot. But before I do that, while I'm at this status, while I'm at this state, I want to get these other cards updated to make sure they're good to go. So what I will do is unplug this device, and when I do, that should change from attached devices. That should go away, which it did. Cable and device to the side, and I will set the Blackjet Cinema dock to the side. Now we're getting ready for some serious work, because we're going to need to power down the computer. And of course I got to suit up, got to put the gloves on. And yes, that's a choice. Anti-static. I take all this stuff serious. Components are too expensive to play Russian roulette with them. And I take the same care if I'm building somebody's system for them. So if anybody contacts me and wants me to build them a computer, I take the same care building your computer that I do mine. So now that we've verified the card, we've got 2 more. We're going to do the same process. I'm hoping the driver will take. If it doesn't, we'll go through that step. And I'm going to leave this in the video. I'm going to leave the recorder running. It may be part of the video, I don't know. But the reason I want this in there is give you a chance to see again what I do with the second time and the third time. So we need to power down. We're going to swap out the card. I'll get my ground strap on, and I will need to find me a bag. It's 1, 2, and number 3. The third box has a bag. Something I will mention now that I didn't a while ago. I still have the CDs that came with the other Titan Ridge cards. So my next step, if what I had done had not worked and I needed to downgrade the firmware, I was going to look for one of those CDs for an old driver for the old firmware update tool and step through that. And the other card, which is the same version revision 1 that's in this computer, is also in the X399 Designare. I could have pulled that card out, gone through the process. But anyway, here's where we are. So I'm ready to go. I'm grounded. I'm going to pull the card out. So I need to turn the power off, make sure we're drained of power. Power's drained. And then we'll unplug. Now we can go back overhead. Okay, card's got to come out. A lot of work just to get a card where I can get it from the first 8-lane slot to the second 8-lane slot. And I got another video I'm going to mention while I'm at it. Because of the issue with some of this access to cards, because of the width of some of the cards in the slots, we're going to do a video where we're going to show you, and the questions come up a couple times, and I hadn't said anything about it. But I'll just say we're going to do an unboxing of a riser cable and a riser bracket, not for the purpose and intent of full-time usage or for a video card, which is normally what you use them for. But we're going to be doing that video to show another video where we need to be able to get the thermal camera in the same plane as an M.2 card. We're going to be doing another emissivity test. In other words, we're going to check the thermals on one of these M.2 cards and see what kind of heat they put out, which is another video that'll compare an Aorus M.2 to the Asus M.2. So that should be pretty cool. So a lot of stuff going on, but I want to mention that while we're at it. Something else you can be looking forward to. Okay, card's coming out, and we will unplug all the goodies, which will be power 1, power 2, the USB header, and the motherboard Thunderbolt connector. Now, when we get ready to update the firmware, the only one we really should need would be the one with the BIOS support for the Thunderbolt 3 connector to the motherboard. We shouldn't necessarily have to have USB 2 for what we're going to do, and we shouldn't necessarily have to have power. But to keep things apples and apples, I'm going to plug all that stuff in when we change. And I'm double checking Titan Ridge Thunderbolt. A lot of work for a little bitty card. I never put so much work into a single card that goes in a computer. Kind of crazy, but we're answering subscriber questions you guys asked, so we're doing it. So what we're going to do is we'll get everything plugged in like it was on the other card, so we're all apples and apples. Get everything plugged in, and we'll double check it to make sure that we're in the same state with the same driver, with the same firmware version before we try to hit it, just to make sure everything's apples and apples. So I'll plug all this back in. So we'll start from the bottom up, plug in the motherboard connector for Thunderbolt 3, we'll plug in the USB 2 header, which is kind of a obnoxious little cable that we can't really get out of the way. It will be easier to route that USB 2 cable out of the way once this is in the second 8-lane slot. And because one pin's blanked out, we don't have to worry too much about getting it in backwards. And then we'll get our 2 power taps plugged in. Okay, cables are all plugged in. Card will go back down into the slot. Card's secure. Cables are all plugged in. Everything's clear. Nothing's going to get in the way of any of the fans. So we're good to go there. Next step will be to plug power back in. I would expect the settings in the motherboard to be fine, so I'm not going to go through that. We'll just go straight to Windows. We'll turn on the power supply, turn on the computer. We are not powering up, so I wonder why. Well, that's curious. Unplug power. Didn't touch anything else. Pull the card out for just a minute. Put power back on. That's interesting. Okay, turn it off. Unplug it. All I've done is change cards. Now the computer doesn't want to boot with that card installed. That's interesting, and I don't know why. So we may need to unplug the USB header. Let's try that again. I got to tell you, this Thunderbolt 3 thing is really getting crazy. Okay, try that again. Card's back in, everything's plugged in. Turn on the power supply, turn on the computer. Computer doesn't want to boot with one of the retail cards. So I'm going to unplug the USB header and see if that solves it. See if I can do that without having to take the card out. Okay. USB header's unplugged. Set that aside. Let's try that again. Yep. Nope. Yep. Okay, I unplugged the USB header on this card. We'll see when Windows comes up how this card is seen. This looks like the same card, but there must be something different. Must be something with the firmware that's on it. I'm going to double check in the BIOS right quick and see what we've got since that happened, which is the same thing we had trying to get the card in the second 8-lane slot. I get this up in the BIOS, I'll walk you through so you can see what I see. That would be computer number 1. Let's go to settings, I/O ports, Thunderbolt configuration. So the card is seen and our settings are still the same. That's what I wanted to double check. Since the computer wouldn't boot, that was kind of squirrely. And all I did was disconnect the USB 2. Well, what I want to find out now is, can I go in and check the firmware and do a firmware update? We're going to find out. We'll see. Okay, so we do F10, save it. System's going to reboot, and we've got the power connected, which we really shouldn't need. But the number one thing is having the motherboard Thunderbolt 3 header connected so we can update the firmware. But all I did was disconnect the USB 2, which is a problem we had with the card that comes with the motherboard. Why it wouldn't function in that second. That's weird. That's just weird. So whatever hocus pocus is going on, it reminds me of a class I had the chance to take, which I should have been a couple of years ago now, about Thunderbolt 3 technology. When I found out Thunderbolt 4 was coming out, I thought, no need to. I should have taken that class, because I don't know what's going on with system management bus, but something on the signaling that's just bizarre. So I'm gonna be curious to check this other card out, see what's going on. I think this may be relevant. Okay, computer's back up. Let's go to the Let's go to the Thunderbolt application. Thunderbolt control panel. See what we've got. And that says port 3 and 4 because the other was port 1 and 2. About. And driver, and it shows 2.3. So we're going to go from 23 on this card up to 50. Okay, let's see if we can go straight to the firmware update tool and see what happens. And based on previous experience, I need to see if Windows is monkeying with things, and I may have to be prepared for 2 reboots. I'll close that. Let's bring up the firmware update tool. Downloads. Firmware update for the Titan Ridge to version 50. Let's unpack, see what happens. Flash, and it's working. Fantastic. So what I'm curious is, once we get this flash firmware update done, if we will see this with 1 reboot or if it'll require 2 reboots. And at what point I'll be able to plug in the USB 2 header so that this will function. I gotta tell you folks, I've been building computers a long time, but I've seen cards that you had to maybe update the motherboard BIOS, but I've never seen a card that you had to do a flash firmware update on the card before the computer would boot. I'd like to know more. I know enough that I need to know more. Now, for everyone that's still wrestling with Thunderbolt, again, you're seeing what we're doing, you're seeing what we're going through, and you see what we had that was a problem, and you see what I did to fix it. And this is card number 2, which was a retail card of a revision 1. Like I said, we've got a revision 2 card around here somewhere. I'm going to have to find it because I'm curious. Okay, we're going to do a reboot. Once we find that that revision 2 card, I'm going to go through the process and do a firmware update on that. And when I find it, we'll do a video on that. It'll be separate because based on what's involved with this, it's one of those kind of things you might do once, but I'm doing it 3 times. And I want to see if there's some consistency to this. So reboot the computer. Okay, and I'm not going to go into the BIOS to double check it because I've already done that. We're good. I'm not going to plug in the cable yet because I want to see what we've got. And if it looks like it's been bricked again, another reboot. And I don't know if that has to do with doing 2 reboots or if a reboot by turning it off to drain all power and then coming back up would solve it, or if it had something to do with the updates. The updates could have been a coincidence, but at least the computer's booting. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around the fact that a card would keep a computer from booting. New wrinkle in my horn. And we are now at 1 hour and 49 minutes. Okay, computer's coming back up. Let's see what we got. And I've taken that control panel and I put it down here on the taskbar so I could get to it quick and easy. Let's see if it shows us anything. Port 3 and 4. You know, I think from what we're seeing, port 1 and 2, port 3 and 4, which I would expect then on the 3rd card, we would go down to port 5 and 6. Just make that comment. About? Unknown. Okay. Based on previous experience, reboot number 2. We'll see. I want to do reboot number 2 before we again plug in the USB. We get the card back up. If we see it, then we'll do a reboot number 3. Then we'll plug it in to see if we boot. So, unknown. So we'll close that, which means it's not functioning. And we'll reboot. What a dog and pony show. Reboot the computer. I would think the system probably needs a power down, but if 2 reboots does the job, then I'm okay with that. So this time we're not going to the BIOS, we're going to go straight into Windows. I hear it post. We've got the wheels, so Windows is coming up. I got to say this while I'm doing this. I've done this and I don't believe it. I got to watch this again to see what I've done because I'm a little bit blown away. Okay, Windows is back up. Let's go to the control panel, the Thunderbolt 3 control panel. Now we've gone back to ports 1 and 2. Okay, so we should now have, and we do, 50. And again, we're showing the driver. It says 141.648.5, but you saw the dog and pony show for that. But the important part is we've got the firmware updated to 50. So we have success so far. So my expectation is now we're going to power down, drain the power, plug in USB 2, see if the computer will boot, come back in, take a look at this again before we go to card number 3. Wow. So we need to shut down and then we'll drain the power out. This should not be so finicky. Okay, system is off, so we need to turn off the power. We need to drain the power. Power's drained. I want everything like it should be. Now the next thing is we'll come back in with that funky little USB 2 cable and plug it back on. From right here, that may be easier said than done because it's hard to get to. So I need to pull the card out to get the USB 2 cable back in. And again, it's keyed, so I don't have to worry about getting it wrong. And the question is, with everything plugged in, Thunderbolt 3, USB 2, that's been the culprit, and 2 power taps. Will it boot? So for anybody that's brave enough to try this, before you cry wolf like we did about bricking the card, some idea of the diagnostic process to go to. Okay, now we need to go overhead and see what we've got. We'll turn on power, then we'll go overhead. And it will not boot. We've updated the firmware and it will not boot with the USB 2 cable plugged in. So I don't know what's special about the USB 2 header. We got the firmware update, but it will not boot with that USB 2 on there. And the purpose of this firmware update was to get down in that second 8-lane slot. And if I pull that back out, now it'll boot. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I'm gonna turn it back off. So right now, the system will come on with the USB cable unplugged. That's amazing. So now I'm curious about what's going to happen when we take this card and put it down. Without the USB header on there, you don't have the plug and play capability. And that's a retail card. So if somebody for some reason swapped out their Thunderbolt 3 card from what came with the motherboard, an explanation from Gigabyte would be nice about what's going on. That's interesting. I still am going to go through the process with all 3 cards and put them in the second 8-lane slot and see what happens with the USB header off and on. So now that we know we can't plug in the USB header, even though we've updated the firmware, I'm not going to plug in the BlackJet Cinema dock. Well, I will. Let's plug in the BlackJet Cinema dock and see what happens without the USB header on there. Let's go find out. Power's on. System is up and running. And as soon as we get into Windows, then I'll go through the process. We'll plug in our SanDisks, then we'll plug in our other device. We'll see what we get. Okay, I heard it post. Windows will be coming up. And we still got the 3rd card. I'm going to go through this again. There's something different with the card that comes with the motherboard versus these other retail cards. Okay, we're up in Windows. Let's go. Control panel. Port 1 and 2. About. So we got our firmware updated. Close that. And we're going to plug in our SanDisk again. See if we see anything. Now remember, we don't have USB 2 header plugged in, but that still works. That's weird. I did not expect that to work without the USB 2 header plugged in. I don't have the USB 2 header plugged in, and I've got a USB-C device, plug and play. And when I unplug it, that goes away. And that was on a USB-C device on a Thunderbolt 3 port. So now let's try the BlackJet Cinema dock. We still have it sitting here. I've got it close enough where I can plug into it. Nope, cable's too short. So we'll get the Cinema dock back up here, close proximity to the port. Okay, I'll plug it into the device. I'm going to plug it into the card. Let's go to the computer screen on Thunderbolt 3. So I will bring up the Thunderbolt 3 control panel. It shows the device is connected, so it's working. But I expected something down here in the bottom right-hand corner. So I'm going to disconnect the cable. I'm going to this time plug it in on port 1. It should ask me to verify it, but since the device has already been approved, it's approved, period. So shows it's in self-power mode, and it works. So if I had like an SSD plugged in here, that SSD would pop up and it would work. Well, we don't have the USB 2 header plugged in, and the USB 2 header is what kept the card from booting up. So from what I can see, there's no need or reason to have the USB 2 header plugged into the card because it's supposed to be for plug and play, but we've got plug and play. So I'm at a loss on that. Somebody smarter than me may know the answer to it. But you see what I see, you know what I know. The question is now, we unplug it, it goes away, we plug it in, and it comes back, which means it works. Wow. I've been asked many times, what was that USB 2 header for? Plug and play signaling. If there's no need for it, and that's what's keeping it from booting, then it's a reasonable expectation to not plug that in. Wow. Okay, so we got one more card. We've updated this one. We verified this one works. My head's spinning. And we've got the firmware updated. And that's what this is all about. So we'll go through the dog and pony show, power this down, put in card number 3, update that firmware one more time, 2 reboots. So turn it off. Windows is shutting down. Turn off the power. Drain it. Drained. Disconnect. Set that aside. Pull the card out. Okay, so Thunderbolt 3, this card's going to be coming out as an updated firmware. Just for grins, on card number 3, I'm going to do the same procedure. I'm going to plug in the USB 2 header and see if I can confirm what's going on. I want to see if the same thing happens on the other card. Why do we have so many cards? There was some other testing we were going to do with Thunderbolt 3 that we just haven't gotten to that was going to require that. And that's why we have so many of them. It was part of the stuff we were doing back on the X399. We didn't get to it because the question is, do you have to have motherboard support for this to work? And there's a way on the Titan Ridge where you can jump pins 3 to 5 to keep the card alive, to make it work. And I'm telling you that now because we may still do a video on that, on how to do that. You know, I'm curious if we can update the firmware without the motherboard support. But without motherboard support, you can't put that setting to make sure that enough memory is allocated. That's interesting. Anyway, that card is updated, and I will write on the end of it what we've done. Now we're going to go to card number 3, which is still a Titan Ridge Revision 1 card. There's a Revision 2 around here somewhere. Okay, same card, Gigabyte Titan Ridge Thunderbolt. PCB looks like the same. Connectors are the same, 2 power taps, the USB-C, 1 pin missing, blanked out, and then of course the Thunderbolt 3 header to the motherboard. And on the back, same settings. We got a part number, we've got a serial number, Titan Ridge, but all 3 of these are version 1. Okay, cables. We'll start at the bottom. The USB header. We want the Titan Ridge header in first. We'll do the 2 power taps. And for grins, we're going to plug in the USB and see if the same thing happens with this card. If it doesn't work, it's easy to unplug. Okay, we've got everything connected. Let's go back overhead. And what I'm curious is when I apply power to this, are we going to have it? So we'll plug in power, turn on the power supply. We need to energize. Nothing. So I'll turn it off, hit it again. We'll unplug our USB 2. Gigabyte needs to come out with some information about what's going on, and I don't want to hear what Intel has to say. I want to hear what Gigabyte has to say about this. I don't want this. I want mano y mano, and I don't want to hear about send it in for RMA. That's not the solution. You know, when things don't work, that's when we learn. When things work, we don't learn anything. So USB 2 is not connected. We got the power delivery, which I don't think is necessary, but it's there. And we've got the motherboard connector put on for Thunderbolt, which allows us to allocate memory for the card. If you don't have BIOS support, you can't allocate that memory for the card. So, and we've got the above 3G decoding enabled since we're using all the cards. Okay, this should boot. Let's see. Power's plugged in. We'll turn it on. We'll energize. It works. And we're coming up. So once this is up and running, then we'll go to Windows. I heard a post. So the only thing that's off is the USB 2 header. Windows is up. Okay. You know, I don't get it. If USB 2 has been the thorn in our side this whole time, and USB 2 is supposed to be for plug and play, we've got plug and play, so I don't understand the point and purpose of that. Curious. You know, when things work, we don't learn anything, but when things don't work, that's when we learn. So, and we learn by doing. So this is card number 3. Card is booted up. Let's go to the control panel and go through that again. Okay, let's check it with the Thunderbolt control panel. Let's try attach devices. Manage approved. Gosh, we don't even see any ports. Let's look at the about, and we got nothing. Application version. Now that's curious. I don't know what's special about this card. This is a revision 1 card, but this card, we're not seeing anything on it. So I don't know. Wow. We don't even see the card. So let's go. Now the Thunderbolt control panel won't even launch. So let's go to the control panel device manager. Let's see what we're looking at. What's going on? System devices, Thunderbolt 3. We see a driver, which is correct, but we can't even bring up the Thunderbolt control panel. It won't come up now. So whatever, it just came up. Well, that's strange. So whatever's going on, I'm going to do a reboot and see if that matters any. Because the about shows the application, but nothing about the driver or anything else. So let's reboot, see if that makes a difference. Titan Ridge Revision 1 and a Titan Ridge Revision 1. That's pretty crazy. So we, out of 3 cards, the one that came with the board, we've been successful and updated. I heard it post. Another card we were successful and updated, which was a separate retail card. And the third card, also a separate retail card. We're having trouble seeing the card. We've disconnected the USB 2 so it would boot, which was a problem we had with the second, with the first retail card. But the second retail card, you know, we got to boot without USB 2 on there, but we're not seeing the card. So second reboot and see if it comes up this time. Okay, back to the control panel. Let's start with the Thunderbolt control panel. Bingo. So we had to do a reboot. That absolutely fascinates me. The first card, we had to do a reboot after the firmware update twice. This third card, which was the second retail card, we had to do a reboot, and we haven't even tried the firmware yet. Now, because this says port 3 and 4, based on what we've seen, it needs to say port 1 and 2, so that means we got to do another reboot before we tackle the firmware. So I'm telling you what I know and what I think, and we'll see how that plays out. Okay, port 3 and 4, let's see if we can see the about. And we've got the driver version and we've got the firmware version 23. Okay, based on port 3 and 4, I'm going to do one more reboot, so that'll show port 1 and 2. I got to say that's just very quirky, whatever that is, whatever that's about. Okay, I heard it post, and you guys still want to do Thunderbolt. Well, okay, we're going down that path, but I want to get the firmware update done, and I hope you can understand now why, because that would have been real hassle and pain if we'd have gone through the process and we'd been reliant upon Thunderbolt 3 and tried to do this, and one, either bricked the card, or two, couldn't get the driver update, which means we couldn't get to the stuff that was on the card, which would be like, what do I do now? And everybody's running like our chickens with a head cut off. Step through it, one thing at a time. I got to tell you, the path that Wizard put us on for this has been instrumental. So, thank you, Wizard. That's on the Gigabyte forums, and I'll have a link up in the description. Back to Windows. Okay, let's take a look at this with the Thunderbolt control panel. It still sees ports 3 and 4, which has me concerned. But it shows the 2 ports, the driver, and shows the firmware version. So I'm concerned based on this, but I'm good to go based on this. So let's update and see what happens. So we'll close the Thunderbolt control panel. Let's go find our stuff. Downloads, the Titan Ridge Thunderbolt firmware update utility, firmware 50 unpack, and we're going from version 23 to version 50. Let's see if this works. And it's working. Okay. Current NVM, non-volatile memory, version 23, going to version 50. Start flash progress. Please don't power off or close the program. Firmware update in progress, 35%. And the mouse is drifting as this tries to update. So I'll see if I can hold the mouse still. Well, that's annoying. I want to keep this zoomed in so you can see the process. Guys, I think it's important to see that we have success. Then, of course, we'll do a reboot, come back and check it. Everything should be good to go. My expectation, it'll say port 1 and 2. I don't know. We'll find out. I've only done this 3 times, and you've seen all 3 of those. And every one of them has been just a little bit different. Okay, we need to reboot. I'm good for that. And again, no need to check the BIOS. We'll just go straight to Windows, go to the Thunderbolt 3 control panel. We'll try our SanDisk USB-C, then we'll try our BlackJet Cinema Dock, Thunderbolt 3, and see what we got. Done a lot of crazy things with computers, but I got to tell you, this has got to be the craziest. It's another reason why I stay protected, because I don't need to add to the problem. I don't need to exacerbate the problem. I need to keep it simple. Don't need to worry about ESD. Well, I don't know where that revision 2 card is at, but I gotta find it. And when I do, another video. Okay, Windows is back up. Thunderbolt 3 control panel still sees ports 3 and 4, which is curious. And we now have an unknown firmware version, which means we gotta do another reboot. We knew that was coming. That's been one thing that's been consistent. 2 reboots. So we'll close that, do the reboot, and back we go. What a dog and pony show just to get Thunderbolt 3 firmware updated. So I wonder now, the purpose of the firmware was supposed to be so we could get it in that second 8-lane slot. Well, the second 8-lane slot wouldn't work with the USB 2 header plugged in. So I'm curious now if we can go ahead and put that in there without the USB 2 header, because from what I'm seeing, we don't need it. As always, there's been so many things we've done that once we figure out something, we may not have the solution to the problem, but once we figured out how to either get around it or to blow through it, we don't stay on it, we move on because there's other stuff going on. I expect this is going to be one of those kind of issues. But I hope this will help anybody else that's had problems with trying to get Thunderbolt 3 firmware updated and get that Thunderbolt 3 card in that second 8-lane slot. Okay, Windows is back. Let's see what we've got. Thunderbolt control panel. We now see port 1 and 2, which is what we need to see. Perfect. Which means we will now see the firmware correctly, which is correct. We show the controller driver version, and we've got the non-volatile memory firmware version 50. Needless to say, we are in business. So let's go through the whole deal and plug in the other devices and see what we see. So we will start again with our USB-C device. I will plug that into a port, and we should see something pop up, and we do. I will disconnect it. Before I do, let's take a look at devices for attached and approved. Yeah, we don't see anything. I didn't expect to, but I thought with that other setting we had last time, I thought that might have had something to do with it. It's not, it didn't. Okay, so when I unplug this device, that goes away. Perfect. So that means we have signaling. We have USB plug and play without the USB 2 header. I about decided Thunderbolt 3 is all smoke and mirrors, and there's a lot we're not being told that we need to know. So now the Blackjet Cinema Dock to verify. It just happens to be what we have for Thunderbolt 3. I'll plug in the cable to the device, power's on, and let's see if we see a device connected to it when I plug it into the card. And we do. Device is plugged in. So we have connectivity. And I don't see any statements about unknown pre-boot vendor. Now that may have something to do with not having the USB 2 header on there. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't see it as a problem. But I'm just making note of it that it's there and that we're aware of it, but I don't see it as an issue. It's a non-issue. But if you see that setting, I think it has something to do with that USB 2 header. So when I unplug that device, that'll go away. Voila. It says attached, no. Plug it back in. Attached, yes. Right there. Attached, yes. And if we happen to be looking at the attached devices, unplug it, it's gone. Now, to remind you, the reason the window didn't pop up is because there's not a drive in the device. It's just the device itself. But we verified that we've updated the firmware, and it works. So the next thing now is to take the original card and swap them out and do the who's on first. That should be interesting.